Today I'm sewing up the brand new pattern from Backstitch and Baste. This is the Clara Tote. This is one of my favorite designers to work with. Her patterns are always amazing. They come together quick, easy, simple, and just beautiful. For this tutorial, all of my materials are coming from Jen's Fabrics. I'll have the links for both the pattern and the fabrics in my description. First thing we have is our main panels for the exterior. This is going to be my front. I'm using a panel, and then this is for the back. I'm using just a regular print. I did interface everything of mine with a medium weight interfacing like an SF101, and then on some of the exterior pieces I added a fusible foam, and I am keeping it out of my seam allowance just for ease in the sewing. Then we move on to our side pieces. This is going to be the two side pieces I need for my exterior. Again, interfaced with a medium weight interfacing and foam. After that, we're going to have 4 side pocket pieces. These pocket pieces are going to be kind of sewn with a little bit of a dart, so they have kind of a lift on the side. You will need 2 exterior and 2 lining to make your pocket. I didn't add any foam onto this, but I did interface all of them with a medium weight interfacing, so they're all stabilized. Also, on the bottom, I made the marks. I just transferred them over from the pattern piece, and that'll just help us later on when we're prepping these side pocket pieces. Next, we are going to have our exterior top pieces. This will be 2 pieces that will go around the top, and they'll kind of be where we attach to the main panel, and our handles will be in between. I did make sure that I stabilized these with foam, especially on the top. You want to have something there so it doesn't sag, foam, Decaville light, whatever you prefer. But I do have 2 pieces there. This is going to be my exterior base, have a layer of foam on it. That's my exterior pieces for the main body of the bag. Here are the lining pieces for the main body of the bag. We have that lining base, and on all of my lining pieces, just the medium weight interfacing, no foam at all. So the base, this is going to be a slip pocket. You cut this slip pocket piece, there's 2 of them, you know, the exterior and the lining for your slip pocket, and you use your pattern piece A, that's your main panel. You have a different pattern piece for your main panel and for your lining panel, so take note of that. But the slip pocket, you do cut 2 extra lining pieces out for it. This is going to be the lining side pieces. This is the lining top pieces. Oh, you need 2 lining side pieces. This is the lining top. You'll need 2 of these. And that lining main, again, 2 pieces there. Those are the main materials you cut out. Super quick and easy to cut out. And if you use beautiful materials like me, it's kind of fun to sit and look at them the whole time. Also, you will need 2 handles. And you can use webbing for these. You will need 2 connectors, D-ring connectors. This is if you want to have a crossbody or the option of carrying it as a crossbody instead of just using the handles. I definitely wanted both, so I do have these. Let's move on to talking about our zipper. So we'll have the 4 zipper panels for that. And on the back of each one of these, I did just interface these with medium weight interfacing, but on the back of each one, I drew a line. The pattern tells you where to draw that line. Whenever you're working with a recessed zipper, you typically will have that line where you will fold the raw edge to. So I went ahead and drew the lines, but I haven't folded it there yet. Wanted to come on and show them to you first without, but I have 2 exteriors, 2 linings. I also cut my zipper tape to the pattern measurements. Now you cut it to 1 measurement, and then she tells you to make a mark on your zipper tape to fold these ends down. Just note that you measure it fully first, then draw your line, then fold the ends under. Then you have your zipper pull on. We have 2 zipper tabs, very unique zipper tabs, and we do go ahead and draw a line on the back of both of these. I didn't interface these at all, and this will be how we will fold this raw edge there to those as well. And then I'm using 2 of my tags. I kind of haven't been using much of my tags lately and I have missed it so much. I have just been in a hurry and I want to get back to using my tags. So I'll be using 1 on the exterior and 1 on the lining. This is all the pieces we need. This pattern is going to be one of my favorites. I can already tell. I've already been looking over it and reading it, and I've been seeing other tester bags being made. This will be my tester, and they're just so beautiful. And so I'm so excited to sew this up with you guys, especially because I'm choosing pink. Pink is my favorite color, and so this is going to be just a fun sew. Off camera, before we get started, I'm going to just do a little bit more prep work. I'm going to make sure that I have the center marks on all my pieces. The pattern tells you which pieces need center marks. I'll pretty much do them on all of them. I'm also going to take the time off camera to fold down the raw edges on my zipper panels and on this zipper tab piece. Now the way I do this is I use a glue stick, just your generic glue stick. I'll run a layer of glue. I'll fold it to that line and then I will iron to kind of secure that. It won't be a permanent fix, but it'll definitely stay folded long enough until I sew it. So I will do that for those pieces that have those lines on there. And then I'm going to also tack down this zipper end here. I have not done that yet. That is something else I want to do. For the handle, if you choose to make your handle like mine out of fabric, what you do is you draw that line down the center and then you fold the long raw edges to that center and then you fold it again. I'm going to go ahead and top stitch down both long edges here. If you want, you can skip all those steps and just use webbing. That is something you can do as well. To talk about the connectors, I did the connectors almost the same way. I drew a line down the middle, but then I just folded those long edges to the middle, and that's all I did there. I did not fold it a second time. You could use webbing for your connectors as well. I will go ahead and top stitch a line across here just to prep that piece as well. So let's go over the pieces I prepped while off camera. I just sewed down the 2 edges on the zipper. I did top stitching on the D-ring connectors just to kind of secure them so they won't be sliding around at the end. I top stitched down both long edges of my straps. Of course, you won't need to do this if you use webbing for your straps. Over at the iron, I went ahead and took my zipper tabs and I just folded those edges to that line on both zipper tabs and on all 4 of my zipper panel pieces. I'm going to set all those pieces aside except for the straps. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull out our main front exterior, our main back exterior. The pattern gives us markings for where we place our straps, so you don't need to even measure. You can just use the strap markings on that pattern piece. What you want to do is you want to have your exterior right sides up and you're going to place your straps on those markings, just giving yourself a little bit of overhang. Make sure you don't have that strap twisted and do it the same on the other way, whether you do the inside on both. If you put it on the center on the outside, it's kind of a personal preference. Just make sure you do it the same way on your front and your back using those markings given on the pattern. So now I'm just going to baste each strap into place on my main panel. I'm going to set my 2 main panels aside now that I have those straps attached. I'm going to pull out those 4 side pocket pieces. I'm going to take my 2 exterior pieces, place them right sides up. I will take my 2 lining pieces and place them right sides down directly on top, matching up all edges. And what we're going to do is we're just going to use the seam allowance given the pattern and we're going to sew across the top. I'll backstitch when I start and stop just to make sure I get everything locked in and the stitches don't unravel. Now what you're going to do is you're going to separate those 2 pieces and you're going to flatten that seam. Whether you just do a finger press or whether you take it over to the iron is your preference. But you're going to separate those seams really nice so they're flat, and then you're going to flip it so that we can get a good even seam line here to top stitch. I'm just going to add a few clips just to kind of secure that seam, and then I'm going to top stitch, and then I'll also baste around the other 3 sides just so this is completely attached and all one piece. Here's the way our side pocket looks right now. We're going to use those markings from the pattern piece at the bottom to make kind of a pleated pocket. This is the way it'll look at the end. Just the bottom will be pleated and the part at the top will be straight. The way we're going to make these pleats is pretty simple. We will take the 2 marks from the pattern piece that are closest to the center and then fold them each to the outer marks. The way I do that is right here is my mark. You can use your stiletto or just your finger to kind of pinch that spot up so that your mark is directly on the top. My mark is right here on the top. Then what I do is I just pinch that section and fold it over to that line that's towards the edge. But I want to look at the back and kind of keep those parts lined up on the back, the raw edge. That's the first one done. Let's do that second one again. Pinch so that your mark is at the top of that point, and then just fold it down to meet the other mark. And make sure your ends are lined up, your raw edges. Put a clip there. The pattern thankfully gives us some measurements to make for sure that we are measured the right way. So what I do now is I'm just going to sew across here. The pattern does tell us that if you're having trouble with yours staying straight, you can go ahead and clip those marks, those pleats all the way up to the top. You don't sew at the top, but she says that'll help kind of keep things straight while you're sewing. So just know that trick if you're having trouble with these. Now all I'm going to do basically is baste these pleats into place with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So just right there at the bottom, I'm going to baste those 2 spots. Now that we have both of those pockets complete, let's go ahead and pull out those 2 side panel gusset pieces for the exterior. They should have foam, fleece, Decorative light, something attached to it. And we're going to attach these on here. We're going to start with one side, and we're going to have to kind of put it to fit in there. It's going to be just a little bit of a lift. So let's start with our sides first to attach them, and so that way we will get that lift properly. So match them all up. You'll have a gap at the top, but your bottom will be flush with it. Go over to your other side and start clipping that one into place as well. And this is what that pocket should look like. It should be definitely opened up. You should have plenty of room there. That's perfect for water bottles or anything else you need to fit in there. Now what you're going to do is you're going to baste around those 3 sides to secure this pocket to your gusset side piece. Now that we have the side pockets complete, let's go ahead and finish up the gussets. So I have my 2 side pockets attached to the panels. I have the bottom, and I have my 2 D-ring connectors. We're going to take one of these pockets and we're going to lay it on the short edge, right sides together. You can use your center marks to match up, but it should fit up perfectly. And go ahead and clip along that side. We're going to sew along that clipped edge with the seam allowance, giving the pattern. Make sure you backstitch when you start and stop. After we get that attached, we'll pull that apart and we'll let the seam go under the bottom. That's the kind of the way it'll want to go, and we'll just allow that to happen. And then we'll top stitch on that base piece to attach the base to the seam allowance. And whenever I baste, I'm just doing it about 1/8 of an inch away from the folded edge. We're going to repeat those same steps on the other side to attach the other one. I'll do those steps off camera, but before I go off camera to do that, I want to go ahead and pull out my D-ring connector, and I want to go ahead and show you how we're going to attach it. I had already marked the center of this gusset piece, so I kind of knew the way it was going to go. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my D-ring connector on that center mark. I'm going to center it on there, and I'm going to have a little bit of overhang just so it kind of helps provide some stability there. And I'm just going to baste that in place. The other thing the pattern tells you to do is she gives you a measurement, and she says you can make little snips along this spot right here. This is going to be the area where the bag kind of curves up from the gusset. So going around that curve here, having those snips will kind of help relieve it and give it a little bit of extra room to spread. If you want to do that, you can, or if you feel like you don't need to, or if you want to wait to snip whenever it's already attached, those are some options too. I'm going to go ahead and complete the rest of my gusset, and when we come back, we'll attach this gusset to the front exterior of our bag. This is how your completed gusset should look. You have a pocket on each end with the connectors attached, the base in the middle. What I want to do is I want to pull out the front exterior, and I'm going to clip it right sides together with my gusset. First thing I'll do is I'll match up the center marks on both the front main and my gusset panel piece. I added a few clips along that bottom straight edge just to kind of stabilize it to help. Now the next thing we got to do is we have to pull it all the way up here to match the top, that side panel to the top of your front exterior piece. I like to put a clip on the edge even though we're not sewing that edge, just to kind of help stabilize it, and then I start slowly clipping all the way around. If you have not made those snips into your gusset like the designer had called for, you may have a little bit harder of a time pushing it in, or you may need to make them later. I have not made mine yet. I want to kind of see the fit before I do, and then I can always go back and add them if I need to. The gusset fits really well on this bag, so I'm good. I'm not going to make snips unless while I'm sewing I'm having problems. I will keep my hemostats close by. In case my corners are slipping, I can grab them and kind of pull them to hold them right together, those raw edges, so I will do that. The way I'm going to sew this is I'm going to lay this wrong side of the main panel down, and I will fold my gusset in. I'm going to make sure my handles and everything are out of the way. We will fold it down, and I will put it under my needle like that, and then making sure I keep that seam allowance in the pattern, I'll start sewing and just go slow. Whenever we have a curve, we always have to just kind of be careful that we don't lose that curve or lose any of our raw edges here, so we get the really nice shape. So backstitch when you start and stop, and just go all the way around. Everything looks good. I'm very content with that, so I'm going to push it back the way it was so we can add the back. We are going to attach the back panel to this gusset the same way we did the front, matching up the center marks, then coming up to the tops, and then clipping all around, easing those corners and curves in. I did go ahead and add a tag to this main panel here. I was kind of back and forth if I should add it here or on that top piece, and I decided I'd go ahead and add it here. I know it'll be a little bit lower on the bag, but I felt like that was a good spot for it. I will add this back piece off camera, and then we'll come back and finish up our exterior. I'm switching my camera angle up to just kind of help you get a better look for what's going on now that we have this exterior done to this point. We have it turned right sides out. That's what needs to happen. But now we need to attach that top part, and then that will finish this exterior. So let's look at the two pieces we need to use. These two pieces are going to be sewn right sides together along the short edge. So we are just going to clip that short edge together, and we're going to sew with the seam allowance, given the pattern on this side, and then again on this one. I'm going to go ahead before I sew the other one and open this up, because I know I need to butterfly and sew on both seams. And so before I'll do it, I'll just do it this way, and that way this one will be a little bit easier, and only one will have to sew in a tube. So I just open that seam, push it to both sides, and then top stitch down both sides of the seam to tack down that seam allowance. I'm definitely back stitching at both spots when I start and stop on this section here. So that is how this looks. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing over here to complete that. As a side note, this would be the other spot where you could add a tag if you still didn't know where you wanted to add a tag. So now if you haven't, go ahead and make center marks on these pieces. I also want to make for sure that I have mine orientated the right way. Mine is slightly directional, and so I do want to take note that this is going to be my top and this is going to be my bottom. So I need to make sure that this bottom attaches here. Okay, let's slip that on there and let's find those center marks and start matching everything up. Match up those center marks first and start clipping all the way around after you match up your center marks. So now that I have everything clipped, I'm going to have to sew around the perimeter of this. I'm going to slip it under my needle this way and just push everything else back so I can get a good fit. I'll make sure I backstitch and then I'll just take my time and rotate the bag as I'm sewing it. So whenever I slip it in, I'm just going to have the main panels against the bed of my machine and I'll be sewing from the inside. Whenever we're sewing these steps, make sure that your handles and your connectors are both going down and that you're not sewing them up. Going around the top of this I felt was slightly tricky. You have some bulk, you're going in a circle. I felt like things easily shifted on this step. So make sure you go around, take your time to keep that proper seam allowance. I actually even went around a second time to make for sure I truly did get the seam allowance accurately the whole way. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up this exterior piece at the top, and now we're going to top stitch all around. But the thing we want to have happen is we want both our D-rings and our handles to be going up. I'm personally going to go ahead and choose to turn this wrong sides out so I can top stitch from this right side. Where we're going in a circle, where I struggled a little the first time, I want to give myself the best chance of getting a proper top stitch on this without messing up this beautiful bag. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going to move this part out of the way. My seam on my handle, it is down right now. I can feel it down. So this is where I'm going to start, and probably not the smartest place to start here on the front, but it's just the way I turn my bag. I probably should start at the back so I don't have my back stitching showing here, but I'll just be careful with the back stitching. I'm just going to be top stitching 1/8 of an inch away from that edge we just sewed. And I really will go this slow all the way around. I'll speed up the video so you don't have to watch me go this slow, but I'm not risking it. The bag's too cute for me to risk messing up. I'm coming up to that D-ring. I'm making sure that I can feel that seam allowance going down and my D-ring is up. That top stitching is complete. I'm not for sure if I need to keep the bag wrong sides out or right sides out, so I'm not going to turn it just yet. But now it is time to work on the lining. We are going to work on our lining now. Our exterior is pretty much completed, so let's go ahead and start doing these steps. We have our base and our two sides for the lining. We are going to do this basically the same way we did the exterior. We'll take one of our sides, we'll lay it right sides together with the short edge of the base. On this one though, we're going to do it a little bit differently. What we will do is we will go ahead and sew with that seam allowance in the pattern, but when we open it up, we're going to top stitch on the side panel instead of on our base. We will do that same thing for the other side. So both of these will be attached to the base, both of your sides, and both will be top stitched on your side pieces. No top stitching on your base. I'm going to do those steps off camera just to save a little bit of time for the video, but I'll come back and show you how they're done. The next thing we will do is work on the slip pocket. The first thing we'll do is we'll take both of those pieces and place them right sides together. We're going to sew just along this top straight edge with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Now what we'll do is we'll just finger press that seam open, or of course you could take it over to your ironing board. Once we have that nice and flat, we will go ahead and flip these two pieces wrong sides together, and I'm going to add some clips just so I get a really nice flat finish on that seam. Once you have that clipped, we'll go ahead and top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from that seam we just sewed. If you want, you can go ahead and baste all around this piece just to have it secure, but I'm just going to do the top stitching here at the top. I'm going to pull out one of my lining pieces, and I'm going to go ahead and baste this slip pocket into place. I will match it up there at the bottom, so you will definitely have that gap at the top, and then I'm just going to sew around that edge of the slip pocket, leaving the top open just 1/8 of an inch away. You can choose how you want to divide your slip pocket. If you want to leave it big, you can, or you can make a division in it, or you can make 2 divisions, however you want to do it. The best thing to do though is to always start at the bottom and work your way up so you don't have any puckering and things like that, or at least that's the way I find it to be better. I'm trying to think the way I want to do it. If I want to do, I think I'm going to do it a little offset. I don't think I want it in the center. I'll have one spot that's a little bit bigger for if I want to have a wallet or my phone, and then I'll have a skinnier spot for maybe my chapstick, lip balm, or a pack of gum, so that I can have 2 separate places. Now that I have this pocket divided, this piece is pretty much done. I'm not going to add my tag onto this lining piece because I feel like it'd be too busy, so I'm going to pull out this one off camera. I'll go ahead and add my tag here, and then I'll also sew up that gusset, and then we'll come back to our next steps. So I have my gusset completed. I have my tag sewn on, so we're going to do a couple more steps. We are going to attach this gusset to the lining just like we did with the exterior, except we're going to leave a turning hole. Now you can choose how big you want your turning hole. I'm going to leave mine slightly bigger because I have foam on my bag and I don't want it to be too stressful. If you're making a softer bag, you know, with fleece, you may not need yours as big. So what we have to do is the same thing. We find the center marks on our gusset, we find the center marks on our lining, we match it up, and we clip all the way around. I'm not going to show all the steps on camera just to save some time on that, but we will do both of those. When I come back, I will have the lining with the gusset attached to both lining pieces. Also, what we'll need to do is pull out that lining top strip. This is going to be sewn and attached the same way we did on the exterior, but we won't attach it right away. We will have to work on that zipper panel and get it completed before we attach this lining piece, but we can go ahead and sew it together in that ring like we did the last time. So we can go ahead and sew down both ends, both of the short ends with the seam allowance in the pattern, and then top stitch with the seams open, butterfly your seams and top stitch them. We can do all these steps, but then the rest of the steps will all be new steps with working with that zipper. So let's go ahead and get these completed, the same as the exterior, and then we'll come back and start working on our zipper tape. So I made another one of those rings for the lining. I have to set this aside though. I cannot attach it just yet. And then I also made my lining. So a couple things I want to mention. First off is that you definitely have to start at the same seam allowance at the top that you sewed the exterior with. But the pattern tells us to grade the seam after we get to a certain spot, and the pattern tells you what spot that is on our gusset. So what I mean by grading the seam is that we just start gradually taking a larger seam allowance around the rest of the bag. This helps that lining to fit a little snug, but we have to be very careful to make sure we start at the top with the correct seam allowance, otherwise it won't fit. So do not start with the larger seam allowance, start with the smaller, the same one that you sewed the exterior with first. Also, another thing I wanted to note is that for the opening, I chose to leave my opening on the side without the slip pocket. If you left the opening on the side with the slip pocket, you just have a few more layers to go through whenever you're closing this, or a few more layers to close up at the end. So this will just be easier for you to just have these 2 layers to close at the end. Also, I'm going to trim down my seam allowances everywhere except where my opening is. And you can see I left a pretty large opening on mine just because I didn't want any issues at the end trying to turn this back through. That is a couple things I did with the lining. I'm going to set this aside for just a few minutes and we're going to start working with the zipper. So we have the 4 zipper panels, we have the 2 zipper ends, and we have our zipper itself. The pattern tells us to go ahead and work on the zipper tab and attach it to the end. I'm going to place my 2 zipper tabs. It already has the raw edge folded down. Place those right sides together, and I'm just going to sew them around that curve, leaving that top open with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Now the designer tells us we can use pinking shears or we can cut notches just to reduce some of that bulk and to have a better sew. I'm just going to try to do it with my regular scissors because my pinking shears are not really good quality and they don't cut very well. I'm going to turn my tab right sides out, and I'm going to make sure I use my stiletto to kind of poke out the curves, make sure everything's really nice and smooth. The designer tells you if you need to, you can cut this at an angle. Mine fits just fine without it, so I'm just going to let it be. All I'm going to do now is slip this in here, that raw edge, and I'm just going to top stitch all the way around to finish off this zipper tab. I'm really glad this is going to be on the inside because I did a horrible job. The colors don't look good and I did a poor job top stitching. My fault on that. So what we're going to do now is we have our 2 exteriors and 2 lining pieces. So this is my lining piece, and the pattern tells us we're not going to place our zipper all the way to the end. We're going to come in just a little bit, and it tells us specifically how much. And we are going to, on the lining, have it right sides up and then have our zipper right sides up. We want to make sure that our pull is closing to the left. That should be the side with the 90-degree angles. The zipper tab should be whenever it is open. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and match up these 2 raw edges, the long edge on both the zipper panel and the zipper tape, and I'm just going to baste this first. Even though I'm basting this stitch, I'm going to make sure I lock in the stitches just because I really want to secure this so I don't have any chance of shifting whenever I'm adding that exterior piece. Now that we have the lining and the zipper attached, we're going to come back with that exterior piece, place it right sides down so it is right sides together with both the lining panel and the zipper tape. I'm just going to add a clip or 2 just to keep that secured while I'm moving things over. This time I'm going to come in with that full seam allowance, and I'm going to make for sure I sew from panel to panel. Even though the zipper is down here, I'm going to start with at the folded edge all the way at the top. Make sure you backstitch really well. And while you're sewing, you're just going to make sure you keep all the edges aligned. Even though that zipper tape is attached, this exterior piece, make sure it stays in line with that zipper tape and lining. Now at this point, you should be able to pull both of these back, wrong sides together. Let's go ahead and just close up this zipper so I don't have to worry about it coming apart. I'm going to add a few clips. And if everything's done perfectly, these should match up evenly. Now, I've always struggled with getting them perfectly, but I did try to plan this one a little bit better. I tried to double check my measurements and my folds, so I'm hopeful that it'll be okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all around this. It'll be a top stitch around the folded edges, both the top and the bottom, and along the zipper tape. It'll just be a basting stitch along this raw edge here. I'm actually going to start with the basting stitch to kind of lock everything in, then I'll come back and do the top stitching around the 3 sides. So this is how the zipper panel looks with the zipper tape. Everything looks great, and I'm going to complete those same steps to attach it to the other side. I have my zipper panel completed. This is going to be for the recessed zipper. I went ahead and marked the centers on both sides. I'm going to have my lining to where it is wrong sides out, and I marked the centers on both of the panels. Now the designer tells us to have the slip pocket be at the back. What we're going to do now is we're going to match up these centers. We want to have the lining sides of this zipper gusset matching, so they are together. Both of the lining sides are together. If you get confused, just think about it this way. Let me go ahead and clip this in place. The way you want it is you want to have your zipper gusset right sides up, and when you open it up, you want to be able to see your lining. So when you kind of think about it that way, it makes sense the way we're putting this together. And the pattern says that this should kind of match up all the way around that main panel. So your zipper panels or your zipper gusset, I don't remember exactly what it's called, should match in length that main panel for your lining. And mine does exactly. So let's go ahead and clip that. I'm going to go ahead and clip this other one just to get it both clipped and everything fit and matched up properly. So this is the way the zipper gusset looks. I have it clipped to both sides. It actually fits great. It looks beautiful. You're going to have just a very small opening. I really like that. So now all we're going to do is we're going to baste down each side of this zipper panel. We do not want, of course, to close the short edge. You're not sewing here, just the long sides of that zipper panel. So let's go ahead and baste this into place now. When I baste, I'm just doing that 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, but I am going to go ahead and backstitch on both starting and stopping. The designer tells us that if we need to, we can open the zipper. I don't think I'll need to, but if I find it to be a problem, I will open that zipper up. At this point, I'm just wanting to make for sure that I did not accidentally get any of this side panel in my stitching. So I didn't catch any of the side seams, but definitely make sure you did not catch any of your side seams in that seam allowance. They should still be free moving. At this point, we're going to pull out that ring we just had finished sewing. So I want to make the center marks on my ring. I'm going to open my zipper, and I'm going to, probably should have definitely made marks since I need to find these center marks again since I just clipped the first time. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to have this lining piece right sides together with this. I also want to pay just a slight bit of attention to my direction, even though it's not a big deal. I want this to be my top and this to be my bottom. So you're going to attach your bottom to this zipper gusset panel. So I'm starting there with that center mark, matching those up. The bottom of this ring is attaching to this raw edge of my zipper panel. Let's go ahead and find the center of this spot here with this side panel if you haven't already marked yours. And then go ahead and clip that seam for your little ring, the lining ring. And let's continue on with that all around the rest of this bag. And then we will, after we get the center or quarter marks, I should say, all matched up, then we will just ease in the rest of it. Okay, I have that lining top clipped all the way around to the rest of the lining. We are going to sew with the full seam allowance on this panel. So now it's time to top stitch. I'm going to take this entire piece and pull it up, causing my seam allowance to go down. Now at this point you can choose if you need to turn your bag, or your lining I should say, right sides out, or if you feel comfortable enough to do it with the wrong sides out. I feel fairly comfortable that I can manage this just fine. My zipper will be going up. The zipper gusset will be going up. The lining here, this little top piece, is going up. The only thing that's going down is the seam allowance. So I'll be sewing on the lining portion, not the zipper and not the lining top. A little confusing, I know. But we're just sewing through the lining bottom, the lining main panel, and that seam allowance. Go slow on this step, and I don't think you'll have any problems doing it from this side, and just kind of making sure you can kind of finger press to find that seam while you're doing this. While I'm sewing, I'm not only checking to make sure my seam allowance is going down, but I'm occasionally checking to make sure that my lining, that little ring, is still going up. So you can see it's up and the zipper teeth are up. Just occasionally making sure it doesn't shift down. You would think, oh, I would feel it or I would see it, or if the seam's down, but just out of extra precaution, it's good to kind of check those things out while you're sewing so you wouldn't have to go back to seam rip. Let's look at what we got at this point. We have a raw edge here at the top. We have a completed zipper. Let's go ahead and close up this zipper just a little bit and push it kind of down in there for just a minute so you can kind of see everything and know clearly what we are looking at here. So we have that ring that is unattached. Whenever we open up our zipper, that is where we can see the top stitching we just did. We have the opening in the bottom. So now what we're going to do is we're going to leave this lining portion wrong sides out. We're going to take our exterior and let's go ahead and turn it right sides out. So what I'm going to do is I want to slip my exterior inside my lining. I want this slip pocket to be the back. So I'm going to take the time and put it in there and tuck the handles in as well. You have to take some time to really kind of shove in that exterior. This is the raw edge we're attaching to the exterior. So the two raw edges, we only have two raw edges left, so it shouldn't be too confusing, but you'll kind of have to smush everything out. I can tell they're all the same size, it's just they're kind of bulky in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of match up my seams here on the side and add some clips there. And don't worry if you have to smush things down in there. We're not worried about how the exterior looks here in the bottom. We're just worried about this top seam being matched up. So I want to add some clips here. And the thing you got to remember is you want it to be a really tight fit. That means your lining will not be baggy. So do about 3 clips there on your side. Come over, match up these center marks here. Start easing that around. You can see it's fitting perfectly, which is exactly what we want. So let's look at what we got. You can see it's all bunched up the exterior. That's exactly what you want. You want this to be extremely snug. You want to have to kind of push that exterior in there. That guarantees your lining's not going to be too baggy at the end. Perfect. So what we'll have to do though is when we're sewing that exterior and lining together, we're going to have to be really careful that we don't lose the edge. So you'll take your time. So let's go ahead and push everything down. Let's get this under the needle, and we are going to be going slow. We are not going to be rushing through this step because every few stitches we want to make for sure that we can see the lining and the exterior raw edges still yet. If you're not seeing them, when you're sewing, then you could be missing them. If you're nervous, go ahead and grab out those hemostats now and start grabbing even before you take off a clip. Grab, and so that way we can guarantee we have just a really great finish on this bag. So let's sew around the perimeter of this bag with the seam allowance given the pattern, making sure you backstitch when you start and you stop. I definitely lost my seam allowance a couple times while sewing this bag, so I had to stop and go get it again. Definitely make sure you go slow and check that constantly. Where there's a tight fit, it does slip occasionally. I'm going to trim down my seams off camera and go ahead and turn this bag right sides out, and then we'll just have our top stitching and closing the bottom left to do. So I have the bag turned right sides out. I have everything clipped. So let's just talk a little bit about what all we have clipped here. I have the opening clipped closed in the lining, so I will sew that first. And then I also have clipped all the way around that seam at the end. So the thing is, it gets a little confusing there at the end, but we don't clip on the zipper, of course. We have it to be going down in. We're clipping that seam where we have the two pieces from the exterior and the lining. Not anything on the zipper. The zipper will be pushed down in, and this will be the edge we see. So I definitely want to make sure that when I clip it so that I only see the exterior from the outside, not any of the lining. Now, I'm going to top stitch around from the lining side. So the way I'll have this is I'll have everything pushed back in. That's why I'm going to go ahead and close up my pocket first. And I will be top stitching on this little teeny piece here. If that makes you uncomfortable, of course, you could turn this entire bag inside out and top stitch from the exterior, but I feel like it's okay. But let's first go ahead and close up this pocket just so we can see a little bit better what we're working on. So that lining is closed. I'm going to tuck everything down in there so you can see clearly what we're working on now. Okay, so the lining is in there. We are going to push that zipper panel in there, and then we are going to sew all along the top. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press everything out of the way, so smush it back, and we are just going to sew 1/8 of an inch away from that exterior edge. I'm going to back stitch here, but if you wanted, you could definitely leave your threads long and knot them on the interior side. We are going to sew all the way around the perimeter of this bag with 1/8 of an inch top stitch, and that is going to finish everything off. We will have to rotate everything all around, and I do suggest you leave your zipper open. I feel like it's just much easier. When you come up to your handles, make sure they are down and out of the way. You definitely don't want to sew over your handles at any point. I am so excited to straighten this bag up and look at it. I really have not taken a good viewing of it because I just wanted to kind of do it at the end. But I am so excited. All of these materials are from Jen's Fabrics, and they are just beautiful, and I can't wait to see how this looks. I do see I have some threads I need to trim, and I'm going to, let's pull up my handles just a little, and let me get a really good angle so we can look at this bag. Look at this, how perfectly charming this bag is. Now, I did use a panel, and I can see, and I knew when I used this panel that I was going to have it coming down a little low, but that's okay. I still wanted to use it. It really was one I wanted to just see on the front of this bag. This pattern is gorgeous. I'm going to take time, of course, off camera to do some ironing and get everything kind of pressed out really nice, some shaping. But look at everything on this pattern. This pattern is adorable. This is a great bag. I have zero complaints with how this came together, how this turned out. Look at that lining, perfectly fitting lining, so open. You know what? This would make a great diaper bag. Yeah, I think this is a great diaper bag. Now, this isn't like a huge one, it's a small one, but this is so, so cute. I'm in love. Great, great job. Another amazing pattern from Backstitch and Baste. If you have not joined their Facebook group, if you've not bought any of their patterns, I highly suggest one of their patterns. I will make tutorials for all of them because I just think they're amazing. I'm definitely going to make a strap. So I think I will do webbing. I think I actually have some cherry blossom webbing that matches this zipper. This zipper is from So Girly Fun, and I do believe she came out with webbing with it as well. So I think I'll do that because I want to be able to wear it this way. But this right now is currently my favorite bag. The pattern is great. The fabrics are beautiful. I love it. I will have everything linked in my description. Thank you so much for watching another one of my tutorials. I hope that you have time in your sewing room today to sew up something pretty, pink, girly, fun, full of flowers and just adorableness. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.